Hi, this is Tom Blodgett from Jende Industries, and today we're going to hone a straight razor on the Shapton Glass stones. I've got about a 4/8 or 5/8 soldering Swedish razor, very nice. So let us begin here. The go-to stone is the 1K glass. This is where most people would start at if they're going to do a bevel. So, again, more extreme would be the coarse grits. That's a little bit more for the guys doing restores or chip damage and just heavy duty work. Otherwise, you're going to really pretty much start at a 1K if you're going to set a bevel. Now, we've already set our bevel. You can follow the same procedures with circles. It's still an aggressive stone. You can start with circles, or you can start with the knife strokes, or you can just take your time on the X. Now, we've already gotten that, so we'll just do the same thing here. Now, if you're going to use the stone holder, that's really no problem. It's just a matter of positioning. The same thing. I just find for the having it up at a higher level, just for me, is just a little bit easier. Okay, this is a living room table, so it's a little low. If you're at your kitchen table or whatever, maybe a little bit more convenient to do. But for me, either way is fine. You got to have just be able to have enough leverage to keep it light. You can see, I'm not really digging deep here. So I've already set the bevel. All I'm doing now is just establishing 1,000 grits. So I would do this again. For me, I would do about 100 of these. Just to be sure, I monitor under the microscope. But you want to make sure that you're removing the previous scratches. And as you move higher and higher in grit, it takes more and more to do to establish the new scratches. So one trick is to, if you want to zoom in here, is to make sure the water pools in front of the blade. I don't know if you're getting that on camera. It's pooling. That's how you know you've got a decent stroke going. If you're seeing a gap in the water, or no water at all being pushed out front, make sure you got water. But if you're not seeing that water pushed out in front here, you see it with the bubble now, that will show that you're not hitting the edge to the stone itself. So you might have a little bit of a wonky blade that may require some tape or some sort of fix to make better here. So now there's another thing that I do here. I'm doing a single X stroke here. What I generally do, and this is up to you entirely, is I like to make sure that I have the entire edge covered, because again, there's a lot of wonkiness to blades. They'll have dips and bows and all kinds of stuff. Everybody knows that. And 3-inch stones, full-size stones, sometimes you have a little thing in the middle here, but because it's raised on either side, you never hit the middle of the blade here. So what I like to do is offset and do an askew X stroke. After I've done my X's and I see a clearly defined pattern, I'll come in and I'll do a skewed. So instead of being perpendicular, I'll be askewed here. And so I'll do 100 of the perpendicular strokes, the regular X strokes. Then I'll come and I'll do another 100 or so. And this just guarantees that I'm hitting as much as I can, and it's even along the way. Same stroke, just slightly askew. So what happens is I'll come in and the X's will be this way first, but then they'll be slightly askewed the second time, which gets it down faster. It makes it work a little bit quicker. And then you can also see your progress, because if you're doing the same strokes all the time, you can get into a rut where all you see are the same directional strokes, but you don't get, you can't tell the difference between them. So, add a little water here. So this allows you to monitor your progress as you go. Now you can switch and do a skew every other grit. I do it on the same stone. So you do about 50 to 100 of these. I generally do more at the lower levels because some of those, like the 320 and the 500, they are quite aggressive. If you use the diamond plate, a DMT or the Toma or something to set that bevel, you really got to spend some time cleaning up those scratches. All right, so you get the idea there. That's 1,000. Now from here, again, a lot of stones to choose from. Ideally, it's best to what most people do on the Shaptons is they'll do the doubling. They'll start on the 1, then the 2, 4, 8, 16, 30. This is, you know, one way to do it. The 1K, for razors, generally I like not to jump. I like to go grit by grit, but you can see there's 4 intermediate grits here. You don't necessarily need all of them. One of the unsung heroes is the 3K, because that came out after the 2 and the 4. So everyone goes 1K, 2, 4, 8. However, as I mentioned in my previous video, the 6K is the critical leap. So I like to make sure I get up to that. Now 4 and 6 are kind of close. A 3 is better as a double if you're going to go double. So most people go 4 to 8. I like to go 3 to 6, but the 2 is still kind of essential to me. So I'm going to hit the 2. It's up to you really, as long as you make sure you do enough strokes, but that 6K is the most important one in my mind for razors. So I'm going to do the 2. And now here, you're not doing circles anymore. You've set your bevel on the 1K. Obviously we did a little bit earlier. You're making sure your scratches are established on the 1K and your bevel is set. Even if you're just coming back to a razor that was good, you would go to a 1K, possibly a 2. If it's a better razor, it's your razor. So that 2K is where, you know, you would start if your razor's just tired. It's your own razor, you only got 1 or 2 razors, you've honed it up, it's all good, it just needs to be redone. You can come back to the 2K, and that will just refresh everything. So here you don't need circles, you don't need knife strokes, you would just simply do X strokes. And you're rolling X or whatever. In this case I do my 2 things. So I'm going to come back to my hand here. And very simple, again, I mean it's, you know, once you've done it once, it's kind of the same thing on everything. You just count your strokes, no pressure, hold it very light, but with control. You know, when I'm sitting in the living room here, it's just, I find it easier just to have it this way. It's just, you know, a little bit more at level. So, slow it down. You can watch the water in the front again. You know, you want to make sure that your stones are flat. So I lap my stones, or I'll do one razor this way, and then I'll turn my stone around, and then I'll use the other side of it, so it wears a little more evenly. But I generally lap after every, you know, 1 or 2 razors. I recommend doing that because if you're not flat at the lower levels, the higher levels, which get used less, have to then warp to that stage. So you want to keep everything equally flat. All right, so just doing my X pattern here. So I'll do 50 or 100 of these. Again, nice and, you know, take your time. Then I'll switch to a skew. Again, entirely up to you. This is the way I do it. And I'll do another 50 or 100 of these. So this is around the 2K. So again, if your razor has been used and it just needs a refreshing, come back to the 2K. If it needs to be reset, the 1K. If you've got some serious damage, the 500 or the 220 or 320 grit will do it. All right, so you get the idea here in the 2K. Okay, and then as we've discussed, you know, now you can do 4K as a double or 3K to kind of get that middle step better. I like not to skip so big at the earlier stages. Later on you can skip a little bit more. Again, that 6K being that critical leap. You want to get it set up there. So here you should choose either a 4K or a 3K. You don't need both. As much as I'd like you to have both, you don't need them. I particularly like the 3K. Now in this case, the 3K is a little bit like a 320. It's better for harder steels. In my mind, it's a little bit softer than the 4K, a little bit more aggressive as a 3K, because the 4K is a little bit less aggressive. It's a personal thing. I really happen to like the 3K, and I'm going to skip from here to the 6K. If you want a 4K, no problem. So I'll put this one in the holder. So you can see the stone's pretty new. Same thing, start with my X stroke. So you just do this, again 50 to 100 at all this, and finish very light. So I'll do 50 to 100 of these, usually 100. But whatever you do is up to you, as long as it works. Then I'll switch to the askew. Again, another 100 or so of these. What we're trying to do is, each grit that we move up on removes the previous scratches, but because we're not pushing down, we're not getting that much aggression here. So the deeper scratches are formed by coarser stones, so the scratches here are not as deep. Now we've done a 1K, a 2K, and now a 3K, so we're not really, worried too much because we're not jumping. If you wanted to jump, say a 1K to a 4K, that requires a little more effort on the 4K to even out the bottom of the scratches from the 1K, the deepest of the scratches. So by spending more time on the lower grits with less jumps, you get set up better. Then you can skip on the higher grits, because once you hit that 6K, again, a critical leap, that's where the magic happens. And then after that, it's pretty quick. All right, so you get the idea here. We'll go now to now in this case, I'm going to my 6K. Again, I can't stress how important that 6K is for that critical leap. If you're looking under the microscope, the 3K looks great, the 4K looks great. It's up to you. Either or the 3 or the 4, it's fine. You can jump to the 8 like a lot of guys do, but that 6K is the one you really want. Yeah, you can jump 4 to 8, but you're skipping over the leap. You're almost there with the 4. The 8K is a little bit past. The 6K, if you look under the microscope, this is where everything changes from, shiny-ish, but some scratches here, to just suddenly just all lined up and polished. This is where you get your mirror. And so this removes, you make sure at this level that everything else is removed from underneath it. So here I've got my 6K. Same thing, start off with your X stroke. Again, now here you might need more than 100 of this, because if you're monitoring under the scope, then you'll see that even though we did a whole bunch of strokes on the lower grits, you'll see you missed some. It's inevitable if you're looking. So in that case, you just keep going until the 6K gets fully established. That's what you're looking for. So here, and you don't have to go fast. I'm not going fast right now. In fact, I feel like I'm a little bit, this is my normal pace actually. So don't worry about the speed of your strokes, the accuracy. You don't want to be pushing down, especially at this level. The lighter you are, the better. So you do this again for 100 or monitor it. You look under your scope and you see how it's looking. Once it's all cleaned up, and you'll see it go from like a brownish gray, brownish kind of finish to a white finish under the microscope. That's when you know you've gotten it right. And once it's consistent, you'll really see it. So then once you're done with your regular X strokes, and this is my rolling X, switch to the askew again. Again, this is me. I do that. You don't have to, but I find that up to a certain level, double doing it really establishes, because then you know that when you're here, you can be caught in a rut. If you're askew, then you can see the cross scratches. Even at the 6K, you can still see quite well. And then, so you're not really going against it to like an X. You've got straight and then slightly off. So it's not that difficult to just redo. So you're just a little bit off. So that's the idea behind it. And then you can monitor your progress even closer. Okay, so you're going to do this again, 100 or even 200 here. This is the critical leap. You don't move on until you see under your microscope that it is as clean as you think it can be. So you get the idea there. Again, you could do that on the 8K if you go 4 to 8. I like 3 to 6 or 4 to 6 even. That is entirely up to you. The 8K would be the same here. So now you can go to the 8K. So you've established here, this is where you get your first mirror finish. After the 6K glass, you can go to the 8K, you can go to the 10K. On a razor, you could jump to the 16K, but it's not recommended, and you certainly don't want to jump to the 30K right away. So you still need one more step in there. So the 8K is actually a pretty decent step right afterwards, or the 10K. So in this case, we'll do the 10K. I happen to like this one. This actually, you can jump a little bit more here. I mean, granted, you're going from 6 to 10 instead of 6 to 8. And then from 10, you can go to 30, or 10, you can finish at 16, or you can move on to whatever compounds and strops, blah, blah, blah. 8 would go to 16 and then 30. So 10 is sort of like leaving out the 8. 6, 10, 30, or 6, 10, 16 is fine. Or 6, 8, 16, 30. Again, a lot of options. You really can't go wrong after you hit that 6K. But the 6 and the 8K, depending on where you're coming from, but I think the 6K is the most critical one in the glass set. So we'll go back to holding my hand here. Same deal. Now here, because we've established the scratches and we've got that mirror finish of the polish, I'm actually, on my 8K, I would do both directions again, but I'm coming to the 10K. I'm actually going to stay with my final askew. That's where I'm going to end up personally. Again, if you're going to end up with a straight X stroke, then you would just do that. I end with my askew. So because at 6K it's really established. At 10K, you're not worried about removing too many previous scratches other than the 6K. So you meet a point of diminished returns where it becomes much more difficult to remove the lower grits. So crisscrossing them becomes actually harder. So you've got everything established at 6K. At 10K and above, I just continue with the same. So here, from now on, I'm going to start with my askew. And you don't need to do as many. 8K, you can go all day long. You won't overdo most blades. That is the accepted minimum shave. On the Shapton, it's not bad. I don't recommend it, but 10K would be where I would be the minimal shave. So here again, just doing my askew strokes. And you do this, I would probably do this like maybe, seriously, like, 50 times. I wouldn't be doing 100 or more because we've done all that work at the lower levels. The higher levels, as much fun as they are, don't get as much appreciation. They don't get as much time. They're glorious stones, but they really don't need as much time. So 20, 30, 40, maybe 50 strokes here. Check under your scope. You don't have to do that many here because you've really done all the work by the 6K. So 10K is good. And I'm just doing the one. Now you can jump here to 16. Now there's a lot of controversy around the 16K. It makes a great shave, guys. I don't care. It's a good shave. It's a little, the 30K is a little more pricey. 16K is great. So this is where a lot of guys will end. Now where a lot of guys make the mistake is that they go and do too many strokes. Here again, because you have that point of diminished returns, you don't have to do 1,000 strokes here because you've already done all the work at the lower levels. Here, now you just want to kind of polish the scratches from the previous grit. You're not trying to establish so much because the edge gets thinner and thinner and thinner here. So here at the 16K, I'm doing my askew stroke because that's what I'm finishing with. And I'm just going to give this, 10 to 20 strokes. Ultra light. If you press down now, you'll just cut through the edge of the edge. The slower you go, the lighter you can actually be. If you start slapping it around, you're going to ruin your edge. I don't know if you can see this though. You really see the milkiness, building up in front of the blade. You get that? And this is just no pressure. So that's how you know that you're doing it right. So I think I've done more than 10 or 20 here. So, and then, monitor under the scope. Then from here, of course, you can go to your 30,000. Now this is again where a lot of guys think, oh, if I do 1,000 strokes here, no, your edge of the edge is becoming so thin that you really don't want that. So here, seriously, 10 strokes, maybe 20. As it's a wonderful stone, but you really don't want too many because you want to just polish the grooves here. So five to 10 is enough. Because we've done all the work at the lower levels. If you haven't done as much work and you're following, say, a pyramid or you're doing it in 5 or 10 minutes, then yeah, you're going to need to spend a lot more time at these higher grits. But the way that I'm prescribing here is you do all the work lower. That 6K is the critical leap. You get all your work done there, then you breeze through the finest grit stones. Yeah, there's no glory in it, but that's the way it works. So with that, you would go to your strop, clean up your strop, you can hit some compounds or whatever there, and that is gonna be ready for a great shave. So, thank you.